No way Woody Johnson just said this. The man effectively admitted to not being a good owner in the press conference, introducing both Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey as the new general manager and head coach of the New York Jets. Meanwhile, he also touched on Aaron Rodgers and his future with the team, and Woody potentially adding his opinion into it, and we're going to break it all down. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jets Digest. It's Chris and Matt here, and if you guys like the content, make sure to subscribe. It helps us out a ton. And if you're part of that 80% not subscribed and you want daily New York Jets news, updates, trade rumors, Matt looks up at. If you guys want all that, plus some more, we're going to have some TikToks coming soon, a bunch more fun stuff. Some live streams are coming soon. You guys don't want to miss out. We're going to have a bunch of fun over this offseason, so you don't want to miss it. But let's jump into this because none other than Robert Wood Johnson, also known as Woody Johnson, the worst thing someone whose last name Johnson could possibly call themselves outside of the shorthand for Richard. Well, Woody Johnson spoke on being the New York Jets owner, what he sees just the New York Jets out with this new regime coming in, and he had a pretty shocking statement, if you ask me, because Woody Johnson, someone who we never would have thought would have said this is what he just said. I have to look in the mirror and be a better owner. Woody Johnson effectively admitting to not being a good New York Jets owner after the 14-year playoff drought and said that he blames himself having to look in the mirror and be a better owner now with this new head coach, with the new GM. Obviously, this coming off when a bunch of stuff was going down with both all these bombshell reports of Brick Johnson being too involved, with Joe Douglas saying he answers to a teenager, with basically Woody Johnson's kids coming into the locker room and inviting their friends and teenage girls into the locker room, which is so unfortunate for the players who probably were just disgusted by all of that. And now Woody admits to not being a good New York Jets owner. Matt, it feels like hell just froze over.
This is an extremely shocking statement out of Woody Johnson because of how out of character it is for what we've known from Woody Johnson. What he has done in the past is no matter what move happens, he always acts like it was the right move at the time or there's nothing wrong with what he's doing. So this is a great turning over the next page with this new regime at the time of major roster turnover and major coaching turnover. Woody Johnson is looking inwards at himself, taking a look in the mirror and saying, I need to be a better owner, which it's obvious that he needs to be. You rattled off a couple of the mistakes that he's made in the past, and the problem is they're just obvious errors that he's making. These aren't things that any owner should ever have to question, oh, should I do this? Because the answer should obviously be no. Obviously, you don't bring kids into the locker room with professional football players. Of course, Brick Johnson should not be giving speeches after Jets games. That's, of course, going to kill all the energy from the team. You got to let the head coach be the head coach, but we didn't even have a head coach. So Woody Johnson had to take over stuff by himself. Woody Johnson has to allow the GM to do his job, has to allow the head coach to do his job. And I know what quote's coming next. I'm not going to spoil it yet, but there might be some news on that, fortunately. But Woody Johnson has to be able to change his ways if the New York Jets are going to be able to move forwards. People are saying it's just rinse and repeat. The New York Jets, every couple of years, it's a new GM and a new head coach over and over and over again. And the common denominator is always Woody Johnson. And they're completely right. Woody Johnson has to change if this team's going to change. Woody Johnson has to stop meddling with the New York Jets. Got to let the head coach have power. I don't want to say power over his players because he doesn't own the players, but he has to be an authoritative figure. He has to be someone who has respect. And every time Woody Johnson undercuts the head coach, that makes the players respect him just a little bit less. Even if the players do respect the head coach, once the owner undercuts him, it's nature for human beings to respect that person just a little bit less. And when those little bits add up, it turns into a massive amount of respect loss for the head coach. Also, we see Woody Johnson, keeps getting too involved with the draft picks. He wants to pick guys that he knows or guys that his friends know. I don't know. Do you remember what the Zach Wilson connection was off the top of your head?
It wasn't even that direct of a connection.
It was like a cousin's friend or something.
Yeah, it was like that.
So something like that. He pays the GM and the scouts so much money to scout college players and scout professional players from other leagues. He has to allow those guys to do their jobs. And he can't just come in and say, we're taking this guy because I say so. Because Woody Johnson, as we've gone over extensively in the past, has other commitments. He's doing stuff in the UK for Donald Trump. He's doing, of course, other things in his own personal life as well. He's got to let the people whose job it is, the people who wake up and work from 9 to 5, watching college film, talking to college coaches, talking to other scouts and getting their ideas. He needs to let them pick the players who are going to be on this roster. And we have to hammer the point home. He has to allow the head coach to put his mark on the team and be the head coach and the number one voice for the New York Jets going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, Woody so often has just, you guys watching this, if you guys have been watching for a while, you know how Woody was the literal only influence for a bit as he was in all of our thumbnails because he's the only guy who was in the front office until the other day. Obviously, Jaime Alea is there as the president, so he's not the only one. And you had Darnell Savage. Who the hell is Darnell Savage? He's an NFL player. You had Savage in there as the GM. You had Phil Savage in there as the GM. But look, Woody was making the calls, and obviously hiring the 33rd team seemingly had a great effect, as now we have the Aaron and Darren duo, which feels like a changing of the guard, and obviously in a way it is. It's a new head coach, it's a new GM, but it feels like these two guys who the Jets would have never hired a couple of years ago. It feels like this would have never been the hire. It's too promising for the Jets to have done. But Woody Johnson wasn't done there with just hell freezing over. As been asked about Aaron Rodgers, basically, as Connor Hughes put it, Woody Johnson said he will not voice his opinion on the Aaron Rodgers decision. It is strictly what Darren Mougey and Aaron Glenn want to do with Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers has been adamant that he wants to sit down with whoever the head coach and GM would become so they could figure out his future together. Now we know who the head coach and the GM are in Darren Mougey and Aaron Glenn. And if you're Mougey and Glenn, obviously, this is what hangs over your head when you first come in is you have an NFL legend. You have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and a legendary, you have a great wide receiver as well in Devontae Adams, who spent a lot of time with Rodgers and is effectively a package deal. So that's basically your first order of business is you have to figure out what the hell is going on with these guys. Are you reworking Rodgers' contract, and is he coming back for one final year to try to right the ship with a new organization, or not a new organization, but kind of a new organization in its own way? And then on top of that, what's the plan with Devontae Adams and that massive contract? There's those things that they have to talk about and figure out because that models the direction of this team going forwards. What are you doing going forwards? What are you looking for in the draft? That stuff affects what's going to happen with Rodgers and Adams. Now, when Rodgers and Glenn and Mougey sit down, it's not been made clear yet. I highly doubt they even know. Rodgers is probably going to get into contact with them soon and figure this out.
He's already been in contact with Aaron Glenn at least.
Yeah, so it's going to happen soon. They're not going to wait around. The NFL offseason's literally around the corner, and Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey, they don't want to be playing catch-up because the entire time they're dealing with Aaron Rodgers and his drama. Rodgers has said he doesn't want to make people wait around for this at all. It feels like we're seeing a more professional version of Aaron Rodgers than we've seen over the first year or so with him with the Jets, with, first of all, basically having everything have to go his way, or then talking about pies and interviews and stuff like that, and hiding away in closets and drinking ayahuasca or something like that, and calling himself a butterfly and releasing Netflix stuff and wanting to be the host of Jeopardy full time. And I could keep going, but we know the deal. Aaron Rodgers is in an interesting position, and he's staring down the barrel of retirement after a 20-plus year NFL career, or he could stick around for another year, play for the New York Jets, be the starting quarterback, and try to be the guy who brings the Jets back to the playoffs, at least the quarterback who brings the Jets back to the playoffs, while Aaron Glenn's already said it's not an Aaron Rodgers thing. This is a team roster thing when talking about Rodgers. This is not a team that's going to let Aaron Rodgers do what he wants the way the old guard did. So it all is going to come down to a lot of factors, and we will talk about that more in the future. But this more is about Woody Johnson and the fact that Woody not getting involved makes it a higher probability that Aaron Rodgers does come back to the New York Jets, because we know Woody Johnson doesn't like Aaron Rodgers. We know that Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson have a fractured relationship, because of all the stuff that happened over the course of this year specifically as well. So now it's a matter of what do Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey think is their best course of action to making the Jets long-term successful team, on top of trying to be a short-term successful team. We saw Robert Saleh do a little over 3 seasons with the Jets. We saw Joe Douglas, similar amount of time. Now, Mougey and Glenn know that. They know how long this is going to take. They know the leash they're on. They don't want to be they're ideally not going to try to drop 2 seasons rebuilding effectively, but at the same time, they want to make the Jets long-term successfully. Glenn said he plans on this being his last stop as a head coach, basically saying he does not plan on going anywhere, and that's a matter of the product they can put out. Aaron Rodgers, as of right now, is your best option for putting out the best product. Today, it's a matter of do they want to restart, and if they want to do that, that's perfectly understandable as well. But it's a matter of all these questions, and I think with Woody stepping out personally, I think it raises the chances of Rodgers coming back for another year.
Yeah, it certainly does raise the chances of Rodgers coming back. And I love the point you made about how it feels like Woody Johnson, this is a more professional angle for him to take, because it feels like the entire Jets organization is moving in a more professional direction. We have a head coach who is actually, if you watch the press conference, that's the man that you want to follow. Yeah. You could tell he was holding himself back the entire press conference. He just wanted to scream even louder. You could tell his passion for the game is so obvious when he's talking. He let a curse word slip. Maybe that was on purpose. Maybe it wasn't. But you could tell he was holding back. You could tell that he loves the game of football and cannot wait to coach for the Jets. So that's why I love this hire by Woody Johnson. Him stepping out, another extremely highly professional move by a person who has been one of the least professional owners in the NFL. Great step in the right direction. If you want Aaron Rodgers back, this is another good step for you. It seems like a lot of steps are lining up for Aaron Rodgers to come back. The one thing that isn't is we talk about Aaron Rodgers' leadership struggles. He has never been a good leader, whether it was Green Bay or in New York, never been a good leader. And Aaron Glenn made it very, very crystal clear during his press conference today that they are building this team off of players. That's where they think the culture is going to be coming from. Mm-hmm. So we saw a lot of picks for the Detroit Lions. They picked players. They picked personalities instead of the skill. And that's why you had Jack Campbell in the first round. He was not supposed to be a first round pick, but in the scouting process, everyone said this is a Dan Campbell type of player. He's a hard hitter, guy who plays with a lot of enthusiasm.
He's literally a Campbell type of player.
Yeah, he is a Campbell as well. Those are the types of guys that we are expecting Aaron Glenn to now add to this roster, and Darren Mougey. We can tell they are on the same page as well, calling each other's by nicknames during their opening presser. That was great to see. We know they have a longer-term relationship. They've known each other since Aaron Glenn was interviewed in a room by Darren Mougey 2 years ago in Denver. So they already started their relationship. They're on the same page. They're looking for high character players who can help them build their culture. And that is going to also help shape their draft decisions. Someone said this guy's name in the comment section a couple days ago, but Jalen Walker is now extremely, extremely more likely to be the first round pick for the New York Jets because he is the most Dan Campbell and now Aaron Glenn-esque player in the NFL draft. We know that he's a very high character player, and that is going to be the type of draft picks that Aaron Glenn is going to make. Based on him talking about the players instead of the character of the players, that tells us that he's going to be putting a very high emphasis on that when looking for players in the draft and in free agency in this upcoming offseason.
So just I know it's not Saturday, so it's not exactly time for a Matt's Mocks right now. But out of curiosity, before this, where did you have Walker going in the draft or on what people call the big board? I call the long board.
Yeah, okay. So I didn't actually have a spot for him worked out, but he would be somewhere between 10 and 15. However, ESPN's Mel Kiper, one of the number one guys on the NFL draft, he actually mocked him to the New York Jets last week in his mock draft before Aaron Glenn came out. The Jets, they're going to lose C.J. Mosley, we think. So he would be able to fill that role really, really well. Or he could also rush the passer off the edge.
Yeah, so I mean, it gets you someone who certainly fits the vibe, fits the energy, and something Glenn did say is I could go into the locker room and give as many rah-rah speeches as you want. That's not what creates culture. That's just what it looks like on the surface is effectively what he said, not verbatim. But Aaron Glenn clearly knows what he's doing. Something real quick, because this video is running a bit long, I just really quickly want to ask you. Darren Mougey got one question, and he even said, thank God. He was happy to get off a little easy there. He was asked just a very general question on his plan, and he gave the most surface level answer humanly possible, where he's like, yeah, we're just going to look into intel, find what we like. And again, I'm not directly quoting him, but he's like, we're going to look into the intel. We're going to find guys who fit on this team and who are good players. I love that he did that. I love that he basically just held his cards as close to his chest as humanly possible. I think that's great for a GM.
I was going to say that's actually the perfect answer. I know he said a whole lot of nothing, but there's no reason to be tipping any other teams off to what the New York Jets plans are at this current moment. We don't want anyone outside of the New York Jets brain trust to know what's going on inside of the brain trust. You got to be it, because that's going to allow us in the NFL draft. People aren't going to know what we're doing, so they're going to feel pressured to maybe trade up for our picks, because they're going to think there's a higher possibility of us taking the player that they want in the draft. If they know, if it gets leaked, let's say it gets leaked, we're taking Tedero McMillan out of Arizona at our draft pick. Let's say at 8, someone wants Will Johnson out of Michigan. They're not going to feel pressured to trade up, because they know we're not going to draft him. Yeah. So that's why you got to keep those cards close to the vest. And I think it's a good thing that they haven't they're not coming into the process with preconceived notions. They're going to go together. They're going to talk to each other, and they're going to learn together about the roster and make decisions together. It really feels like these two men have a good chemistry going with each other, even though they've only been working together for like 3 days now. Mougey got hired, was it Friday night, Saturday morning?
It became official on Saturday, I believe.
Yeah, it's pretty recent. So
yeah, and I mean,
good to see.
It's 5:17 p.m. right now on Monday, January 27th. Around right now, Mougey and Glenn are talking about this roster. They said they were going to talk about it tonight. So I imagine it's right now after everything's done. They're like, let's jump into it. Let's get it done. Let's go home, regroup tomorrow, do the same thing. But Woody's comments essentially saying that he's going to kind of stay away and let the guys who he hired do their thing, and on top of that, say that he has to be a better owner. I think that's the icing on a cake for the first day in a lot of months to truly be excited to be a New York Jets fan. But I want to hear from you guys down below. So let us know in the comments what you think. Are you excited right now? I'm pretty excited. Guys, like this video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Have a great day. This video went long, but hey, it's a great day to be a Jets fan, and we don't get to say that very often. So, yeah, it's a great time. Guys, go Jets. It didn't stop recording, man. It's your fault.